Discover the incredible journey of a maid, how love transformed her life in just 12 months. Maria pushed the heavy vacuum across the pristine floor of the Thompson household, each swipe pulling her deeper into her own thoughts. At 24, she had mastered the art of scrubbing floors and polishing mirrors, yet those very actions often felt like shackles, chaining her to an identity she desperately longed to escape. The rich fabrics of the Thompson's interior only served to highlight her modest work attire. As she straightened up, breathless from the effort, she caught her reflection in the gleaming glass, an unremarkable maid whose aspirations were as intangible as the delicate dust mote swirling in the sunbeam. Although her job provided stability, the thought of community college scholarship opportunities loomed over her like a distant star. The idea sparked a thrill, but it was quickly followed by the heavy weight of responsibility the family she worked for relied on her. How could she abandon them for a chance at an uncertain future? The conflict twisted her stomach in knots. Did she dare to believe she could be more than a maid, more than the underappreciated part of a picturesque home? While dusting the living room shelves, her mind drifted to Mr. Thompson. The widowed literature professor had become a guiding star, reminding her that her intelligence was worth nurturing. His gentle encouragement made her yearn for a life where she could embrace her love for literature, a life so far removed from her scrubbing rags. But the sacrifice was steep. What if this dream only led to another disappointment? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As autumn painted the trees gold, Maria discovered a buried truth concerning her father's life, the struggles he'd faced and the sacrifices he'd made to give her the smallest chance to break free from the cycle of poverty. Each revelation lit a spark of determination within her. But then the wind shifted. A fellow maid, flicking her perfectly manicured nails against the glass, belittled Maria's aspirations, planting seeds of doubt. Could someone who had always felt like an outsider ever truly step into a world of intellect and privilege without suffering betrayal? With every passing day, Maria felt herself teetering on a tightrope of hope and despair. The closer she got to pursuing her education, the more the shadows of her colleagues' envy loomed over her. Hadn't she been warned that dreams were a luxury for those who could afford them? In the depths of her anguish, she faced a choice that squeezed her heart. Would she delegate her dreams to mere longings and fall back into the shadows, or would she face the betrayal head-on, ready to confront those standing in her way? The future felt unbridled and wild, yet so terrifyingly close she could almost taste it. As winter set in and the first snow blanketed the earth, she stood frozen before the community college's doors, hands trembling, heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. Did she truly have the power to reclaim her narrative, or would the weight of betrayal bury her aspirations before they even had a chance to bloom? The icy air stung her cheeks, a reminder that she was standing at the brink of something monumental or the edge of an abyss. Maria inhaled sharply, a deep breath that felt more like a gasp. The icy air prickled against her skin, each exhalation mingled with a hesitation that transformed her resolve into uncertainty. In that moment, the world of academia beyond the doors felt both tantalizingly close and terrifyingly far. She gripped the strap of her bag, filled with the scholarship documents that held the potential to unlock her future. But the wonky remains of doubt pulled at her like gravity, threatening to drag her back into familiar shadows. Was she truly ready to step into a world that mocked her ambition? What if crossing that threshold only broadcasted her insecurities? But then, the memory of her father's sacrifices cut through her turmoil, sharpening her resolve like a blade. His dreams had never been fulfilled, their whispers had been drowned in the noise of survival. How could she allow that legacy to replay in her life? With a deep resolve, she pushed open the doors, the rush of warmth enveloping her. The vibrant colors of student life invaded her senses, igniting a mixture of excitement and unease she had never experienced before. The reality of being a part of this world, the chatter, laughter, and ambition swirling around her ignited her spirit, yet, as she navigated the lobby, a sense of trepidation followed her. Would she fit in? Or was the disapproving glare from the well-dressed students merely a projection of her wounded self-image? Unpacking her decision, she felt the weight of the concrete paths before her, the general studies course, a step towards her ultimate goal of studying literature, a subject that felt like second nature yet weighed heavily on her heart. In the first weeks, Maria's resolve was tested. Classroom discussions sent her mind racing, threading her thoughts with those of her professors and peers. However, the thrill of intellectual pursuit was often punctuated by feelings of inadequacy. In a literature class, she struggled to keep pace with the conversations, grappling with concepts that seemed to glide effortlessly off the tongues of her classmates. One afternoon, amidst an analysis of Shakespeare's sonnets, she found herself lost in her own thoughts, wishing to articulate a point that flickered in her mind. Yet, every time she opened her mouth, the words slipped away, evaporating into the air like steam before she could fully grasp them. The embarrassment and frustration bubbled over, a toothless growl inside her. I wish I had the confidence to share my ideas, she pondered. What if her perspective could enlighten them? Days turned into weeks, and she strategically clung to the corners of her classroom, absorbing knowledge while fighting against her inner demons. Shortly before finals, she stayed later than usual one evening, her notebook scattered with annotations and half-finished thoughts. As she flipped pages absent-mindedly, Mr. Thompson appeared, leaning against the doorframe with an encouraging nod. I see you're cultivating your ideas with tenacity. His words, gentle yet firm, wrapped around her insecurities like a warm embrace. Why not share your insights? His question hung in the air, ripe with a challenge. Could she summon the courage to articulate her thoughts with the same passion she felt within? A stirring realization began to quench her doubts. Perhaps it was in the act of sharing, not the content itself, that her true growth lay. Empowered by a sudden surge of determination, Maria vowed that during the upcoming class discussions, she would leap into the discomfort. She would not just be a spectator in her narrative, she would empower her voice amidst the silence that had held her back for too long. As she approached the end of that semester, the stakes soared higher. She now faced a final project that would encapsulate everything she had learned, a direct reflection of both her progress and her fears. Would she rise to the occasion, overcoming the shadows of doubt that had plagued her? In those concluding moments, Maria could feel history waiting. She stood at the cusp of possibility, her identity gradually forging itself into something new, ready to confront the deeply embedded fears. But lurking in the corners, whispers of her past and future continued to collide. How would she present herself to the world when the time came? The moment of truth was neared, the stakes had never been higher. Would she push through her fears, or would she let them consume her? The question haunted her, a refrain echoing in her mind as she sat at her desk, pen poised above paper, the path ahead eternally shrouded in uncertainty. The morning light filtered through her window, casting a soft glow that both comforted and unsettled Maria. It was a new day, a blank page, yet heavy with the weight of her intentions. Today marked the beginning of her final project, her chance to etch her thoughts into a tangible form, a manifestation of her struggles and triumphs in the world of literature. The gravity of the task loomed large, but she refused to retreat into the familiar shadows of doubt. Sitting at her desk, she let her pen hover over the paper, a faint tremor in her hand. A blank canvas was not simply an opportunity, it resonated as a mirror reflecting every insecurity she had battled. What if I fail to deliver? What if my insights fall short? The question swirled like fog, but she stilled the chaos with a deliberate breath. This was her moment to break free from her own limitations, to transform her fears into convictions. Her mind swam with ideas. The themes of struggle, identity, and realization clamored for attention, each demanding to be explored. Yet, as soon as the clarity dawned, it was swiftly followed by an avalanche of self-doubt. How could she articulate profound thoughts inspired by giants in literature when she feared her own voice? Would her classmates welcome her insights or dismiss them as trivial? Shaking off the remnants of doubt, Maria designed a mind map, the visual organizer bringing order to her chaotic thoughts. As she scribbled connections between her ideas, a flicker of excitement ignited within her. This project was not merely an academic exercise, it was an exploration of her identity, of who she wanted to become. With each line drawn, she felt an unshackling. She was strategizing her own victory over self-imposed limitations. Days transformed into nights as Maria poured herself into her work. The library became her cocoon, a sanctuary replete with ink-scented pages and the comforting rustle of scholars lost in thought. Still, moments of despair persisted. Alone among all those confidently engaged in their studies, she often felt like an imposter, her heart thudded with every whispered conversation around her. But rather than succumbing to despair, she used these feelings as fodder for her writing. If I could write my insecurities, I could also confront them, she realized, and began to weave her narrative into the project. As she approached the presentation date, the anxiety clawed at her with greater intensity. The thought of standing before her classmates sparked a familiar instinct to retreat. Yet, she had committed to showing up, not as an observer but as an active participant in her future. No longer could she afford to feed her fears with avoidance. On presentation day, Maria's heart raced in sync with the ticking clock. Every step to the front of the classroom felt heavy, anchored by an invisible weight, the expectation swirling through her mind. But deep within her was a newfound determination. She envisioned her father, saw his face blending with the faces of her peers, their eyes glimmering with curiosity and connection rather than judgment. She began, her voice quaking at first, the words spilling forth cautiously as if testing the waters. But as she saw her classmates lean in, the focus drawing them towards her, she felt a shift. The internal tide began to turn, confidence encasing her like armor. I have struggled with self-doubt, feeling invisible within this vibrant tapestry of intellect, she articulated, each word forging a connection to her audience. The moments she had feared transformed into revelations, igniting sparks of recognition and empathy. Maria discovered an unexpected power within her vulnerability. As her presentation drew to a close, the applause resonated with a profound warmth, nudging her heart toward recognition and acceptance. She had stepped out of the shadows, and no longer did she feel like an imposter. Yet, even amidst the satisfaction, a new question stirred within her: what other fears awaited her in this unfolding journey? Little did she know, another challenge lay ahead, one that would demand even deeper confrontations and transformations. Would she have the strength to continue rising above, or would the shadows regain their hold? The week following her presentation was a whirlwind of emotions. Maria felt buoyed by the applause, yet shadows lingered on the edges of her newfound confidence. She had found her voice in one moment, and the next, it felt as though she stood at the precipice of a deeper challenge, a wave of self-awareness that threatened to sweep her off her feet. As she gathered her things in the library, a familiarity settled in her chest. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the wooden tables where she had spent countless hours immersed in books. Today, however, her attention drifted away from the pages to the students around her. They seemed untroubled, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. Did they experience moments of doubt as she had? She pushed the thought aside and focused on her project, excited to dive into the revisions that beckoned. Yet as she began, once again, doubts crept in, uninvited but persistent. What if the revisions made her insights even weaker? Had she truly communicated her message effectively? These swirling questions threatened to anchor her to the same insecurities she had just begun to release. Maria decided to invite Jessica, her classmate, to offer feedback. Jessica had always exuded confidence, her voice unwavering, and her critiques sharp yet constructive. She picked up her phone and sent a quick message, yearning for external validation of her work. When Jessica arrived, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow. As she read through Maria's project, Maria tapped her fingers against the table, her heart quickening with anticipation. After a long silence, Jessica's eyes sparkled with admiration. This is powerful, Maria. You tackle themes that are deeply personal but resonate broadly. You have to own this. The compliment felt like a lifeline, yet something within Maria hesitated. But what if people think I'm making it all up? That it's all just exaggeration. The fear of judgment slithered back into her mind. In the face of encouragement, her insecurities reigned. Jessica, undeterred, said, those feelings are yours. They're authentic. Trust that authenticity. You've shared something real and it's going to resonate. Maria felt a flicker of warmth at this affirmation, yet another question ignited within her: what if her authenticity revealed more than she was ready to confront? As the days passed, her revisions began to take shape. Her pen danced across the page, weaving the narrative tighter, more impactful. But during her solitary nights, she faced herself in the dark. The words she penned illuminated her past in profound details. Each line unearthed stories she had buried deep, her childhood insecurities, the doubts cast by peers, and a nagging sense of inadequacy that seemed to shadow her every step. A week later, as she shared a draft with her professor, she could feel the weight of vulnerability settling on her shoulders. Would he see the rawness of her words as weakness or strength? His feedback would determine whether this exploration was worth the risk of unveiling so much of her inner self. Upon receiving her professor's response, Maria prepared herself for both affirmation and critique. Yet the allure of his feedback beckoned for her to confront her innermost fears. The moment she opened the email, her heart raced. She had defined her narrative, now she sought validation, even as a new fear gripped her. What if this journey was only beginning to expose the layers of self she hadn't dared to unveil? With her palms clasped tightly together, she faced the screen, ready to confront whatever awaited her on the other side of this challenge. The tension coiled tighter, each click of the mouse an invitation for further revelation. Your insights are both profound and necessary, he had written. But lurking within the rest of that email were additional questions and critiques that would demand more of her than she had prepared for, shaping a project into a more significant reflection of who she was meant to become. Little did she realize, embracing these insights might strip bare the very fabric of her existence. Would she emerge with a stronger identity, or would she unravel before her own self-discovery? The following days unfolded in a haze of anticipation and dread. Maria shifted between moments of fervor for her project and bouts of paralyzing anxiety. Each critique she had received swirled in her mind like a storm, some affirming her efforts, others taunting her insecurities. She grappled with how to blend her truth and establish a cohesive narrative that resonated with others while remaining authentically her own. Her professor's comments had ignited something within her, a fire stoked by the possibility of uncovering a deeper understanding of herself through this work. But new questions consumed her. Could she transform the raw experiences of her past into something more than just a narrative, something that could touch lives? Maria found herself at a coffee shop, tapping her fingers nervously against her laptop. The aroma of brewed coffee surrounded her like a comforting embrace, yet she couldn't shake the prickling awareness of the onlookers. With a deep breath, she opened her document, a reckoning with her own evolution. The glaring cursor blinked, a relentless reminder of the words yet to be written. She thought of the childhood moments she had buried, each memory tainted with a mixture of embarrassment and sorrow. Drawing from those depths felt both important and terrifying. How could she shed light on her journey without drowning in its shadows? She forced herself to confront her past, and the words began to flow like an unsteady river. I was the quiet girl in the back of the class. She penned those first few lines hesitantly, but with each stroke of a pen, she felt a flicker of resilience. Yes, she had been that quiet girl, but she was also more than that. She was the girl who had learned to find solace in books when the laughter of her peers turned into waves of isolation. Suddenly, the cafe's bustle faded into the background as a new thought emerged. She was not alone in her struggles. This epiphany sharpened her focus. What if her narrative was not solely about her? What if it served as a bridge for others who felt unseen? She poured herself into crafting a story, juxtaposing moments of despair with newfound strength, illustrating transformations rather than mere existence. Yet with each intimate revelation she wove into the text, Maria felt an undercurrent of fear beckoning her back. What if this honesty alienated her from those she wished to connect with? Would she lose herself in the narrative she crafted? A light knock on the table drew her attention to Jessica, who slid into the chair across from her. Maria shared snippets of her work, eagerly explaining her journey and motivations. Jessica listened intently, nodding in encouragement, but Maria couldn't ignore the ache of vulnerability rising within her. You're tapping into something much more significant than you realize, Jessica remarked. Your story has the power to change perceptions. Don't shy away from that. Perhaps this was indeed her metamorphosis, but what if she was simply setting herself up for yet another dismissal, another judgment that would echo the wounds from her past? As the words collided within her, Maria steeled herself. She would not flinch. The fear could coexist with her determination. It dawned on her that moments of self-doubt were just as essential to her story. Her story was a powerful testament to resilience, an invitation to others to embrace their own struggles. In the following days, she cultivated her narrative with a fiery resolve, even as she prepared for the next set of revisions. It was exhilarating and terrifying, each paragraph an exploration into the depths of her character. The stakes felt higher than ever as she approached the point of no return, but amid her relentless zeal, a nagging question remained: how far would she have to dig before she could fully understand herself? Each revelation would demand a distinct layer of introspection and vulnerability. Were the connections to her past worth the emerging fractures? As she stared into the reflective surface of her laptop, Maria understood that this journey was more than just self-discovery. It was a declaration of independence from the judgments that had once bound her. The moment of clarity surged through her, and in that instant, she truly chose to embrace who she had been, who she was, and who she still had yet to become. With renewed focus, she opened her document to navigate her way through yet another round of revisions. Little did she know, through this journey of uncovering layers, the greatest battle loomed, one that would force her to confront the harshest critic she had ever known, herself. Would she find peace amidst the chaos of her self-exploration, or risk everything to redefine her identity? The days that followed felt like an emotional avalanche, each layer of her past crashing into her present with relentless force. Maria pushed through moments of vulnerability, anchoring her identity in the words she wrote. With every revision, she unearthed pieces of herself that had long been buried. Her narrative began to shimmer with raw honesty, but with that shimmer came a haunting question: could she bear to reveal everything? As she delved deeper into her writing, the unfiltered truths about her experiences emerged. She found herself recalling nights spent holding back tears and days spent feeling invisible. Each anecdote she penned reminded her of the duality that had defined her, the girl who had receded into the background and the woman emerging from the shadows, seeking to claim a voice. Seated at her usual table in the coffee shop, she noticed the patrons around her, lost in their worlds. Some laughed, others clashed voices in argument, but for Maria, the air was thick with unspoken stories. A surge of determination surged through her. Her narrative was not just an echo of her pain but a potential symphony of shared experiences. What if her rawest truths could resonate with those searching for their own authenticity? The relentless cursor taunted her again as she wove her narrative. She had stumbled upon a pivotal memory the moment she stood up against the bully at school, a moment when she discovered her worth, however fleeting. Words flowed as she described her trepidation, the shaking of her voice, and then, the realization that she was seen. That single moment served as a catalyst for her new perspective on life. In this vivid recollection, Maria realized something fundamental: her strength was intricately tied to her vulnerabilities. The narrative was no longer merely a recounting of events, it was an exploration of the emotions that ran deeper than the rejections, the shame, and the fear. But with this enlightenment came a heavy weight. Each time she pushed forward, that old voice of self-doubt lurked in the shadows. Would revealing her truth invite judgment from those she feared? What if opening this door led her to more pain? Each internal battle grew more pronounced, forcing her to confront the delicate balance between authenticity and the desire for acceptance. After several intense hours of writing, Maria stepped outside for fresh air. The warm sunlight bathed her face, a momentary reprieve from her inner turmoil. Yet clarity began to form amidst the chaos. Standing on the pavement, she realized that her story could serve a greater purpose, a beacon for others traversing similar paths. Perhaps by embracing her struggles, she could shine a light for those still mired in darkness. Once more, she returned to her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. She wasn't just writing for herself anymore but for anyone who had ever felt like an outsider. As she explored the intersections of pain and healing, fleeting moments of joy also found their way into her prose. The narrative she crafted transformed into a tapestry of human experience woven from both grief and triumph. Yet, despite these exhilarating breakthroughs, moments of doubt crept in. She questioned if she was a fraud, a fear that surged with ferocity when nighttime arrived and silence engulfed her apartment. The thoughts slithered through her mind: would anyone care? Who was she to think that her story mattered? In those critical hours, Maria wrestled with the reality of what she was sharing. She needed to prepare for the reaction she might face. Confronting that nagging voice reminded her of the necessity of challenging herself not just in her writing but in her interactions with others. The greater insight coaxed her slowly out of her cocoon of timidity, and then, at the last moment of vulnerability, she came across an old diary entry she had written in high school. Words scrawled in messy ink resonated with her present fears: but what if my voice could change even one life? The time had come for her to muster every ounce of courage she had forged from her past. Maria understood that by stepping forth into this narrative, she wasn't just reclaiming her identity, she was challenging the narrative of her life and perhaps, just perhaps, inviting others to do the same. As she closed her laptop for the evening, exhilaration coursed through her veins, mingling with apprehension. The moment of truth was dawning, and she realized it wouldn't come without confrontation. With daunting anticipation, she acknowledged the next hurdle that awaited her: the necessity to share her work publicly. Would she rise to the occasion or retreat yet again? The weeks that followed were a blur of writing and self-reflection for Maria. Each day opened a new chapter of her life, and she found herself grappling with the weight of her words, the delicate balance of sharing her truth and guarding her heart. As she formed each paragraph, the power of vulnerability clashed with the fear of exposure. Slowly, the anticipation of sharing her work transformed into an overwhelming mixture of excitement and dread. She sank deeper into her narrative, unearthing stories about friendships lost and moments that shaped her understanding of love. Writing became less about recounting her experiences and more about painting a vivid picture for others. It was cathartic, yet she felt the growing pressure of impending vulnerability. Would the people from her past recognize themselves in her words? How would her honesty affect her relationships, both old and new? One afternoon, she decided to visit a local writers' group, hoping for connection and constructive feedback. The venue was quaint, filled with mismatched chairs and the soft hum of chatter among fellow aspiring authors. But as she stepped through the door, the walls seemed to close in. Stifling her anxiety, she scanned the room and spotted an empty chair, reluctantly heading over. Her heart raced at the thought of sharing her work aloud. "Hi. I'm Maria," she introduced herself with a tremor in her voice. As the meeting unfolded, members shared snippets of their narratives, their revelations echoing across the room like a warm embrace. Each story told was laden with truths and raw emotion. And yet, with every personal account, Maria felt her internal critic grow louder, a cacophony of doubts clanging in her mind. Just share, she muttered under her breath. You owe it to yourself. When her turn arrived, she felt her throat tighten, her palms clammy against the pages. The choice loomed heavily over her, to speak or to retreat, to connect or to remain concealed. Drawing a deep breath, she began to read an excerpt from a memoir, recount of that pivotal moment when she stood up for herself in school, harnessing her childhood strength. As the words flowed, she observed each listener as expression transformed from curiosity to empathy. The room shifted, she felt the solidarity in the air. Word by word, her hesitation tied to that past as a child melted away. The acceptance she'd long craved seeped into her soul, and for the first time, the old whispers of doubt fell silent. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. It reverberated through her chest, vibrating against the remnants of her insecurity. She had shared her voice, and for an instant, the fear dissipated. It was replaced by a palpable sense of belonging. Yet, in that moment, the shadows of her anxiety still loomed, reminding her that the journey had only just begun. As members provided feedback, Maria soaked in their words, eager to learn, to grow. One woman's insights particularly struck a chord. Your honesty is your strength. Own it, and it will empower others. Those words lingered in the air long after the group had dispersed. Exhilaration and newfound confidence fueled her desire to push boundaries. She returned home that night, affirmations echoing in her thoughts. Maria now envisioned her work as a powerful tool to connect with others, but she also realized she needed to prepare for potential backlash reactions from those who may take offense, even from her own past. The adrenaline surged within her, solidifying a resolve she didn't know she possessed. A decision crystallized in her mind: she would share her work online, allowing her voice to reach even those she knew would judge her the harshest. But could she handle the responses, both supportive and critical? Sitting at her desk, she stared at the blinking cursor on her screen, heart racing once more. The moment she would press publish felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. Taking a deep breath, she poised her finger above the key. Would this leap of faith lead to liberation or dismantle everything she held dear? Dramatic tension bubbled within her. With a resolve she hadn't previously known, Maria was ready to write her next chapter, but not without trepidation about what awaited her beyond the click. The following morning brought with it the haziness of sleepless nights, compounded by the weight of Maria's decision. She had slept only fitfully, her mind a whirlwind of scenarios and outcomes that circled like a hawk watching its prey. The shadows of doubt skulked in the corners of her thoughts, threatening to overshadow the newfound resolve she had felt the night before. Over breakfast, she tried to drown out her anxieties with the warmth of coffee, its bitter edge stuck against the sweetness of her unfulfilled dreams. The online world loomed large in her mind, and with it, the prospect of vulnerability. As she scrolled through the accounts of established writers, she found herself envious of their unapologetic authenticity. They had built a bridge between their truth and others, creating a community of shared experiences. How did they do it? Her fingers hovered above her laptop, thoughts racing. Could her words ever wield such power? Maria knew she had to prepare herself for what might unfold. Inspiration struck her as she brainstormed potential themes for her online writing. She would transform her memoir into a series of interconnected essays, exploring the challenge of vulnerability and the messy beauty of human resilience. Each essay could be framed as a chapter, and each chapter would themselves serve as a mini-story reflecting both her triumphs and stumbles. But then there was the relentless whisper of her internal critic, punctuating her determination with doubt. What if no one reads it? What if people misunderstand your intention? She envisioned peers and critics dissecting her work, casting shadows over her authenticity. It was in that moment of hesitation that an unfamiliar conviction emerged. They could judge her, but they would not silence her. She held on to the words of the woman from the writers' group, your honesty is your strength. Clenching her jaw, she resolved to confront her fear, not only to share her truth but to embrace the transformative power it held, not just for her, but for others who were struggling with their own shadows. As Maria began typing, her fingers were brisk and decisive, translating her kaleidoscopic thoughts into coherent sentences. Slowly, she wove vignettes of past heartbreaks, family dynamics, and fierce moments of self-discovery into her web of narrative. With each word that flowed, a layer of old insecurity peeled away. Her past no longer felt like a cage, instead, it transformed into a welcome mat inviting engagement from others. She could feel the pulse of the online community, already similar stories waiting to be united in a tapestry of shared experiences. Despite this burgeoning excitement, the nervous flutter of exposure coursed through her veins. After hours of deliberate crafting, the time had come to revisit that cursor, that pivotal moment. With steady determination, she reviewed her draft one last time. A deep breath anchored her resolve. Would she truly let the world in? Would she actually unleash the parts of her life that had once existed in a secretive cocoon? The cursor blinked again, and in that pause, the moment of truth materialized a crossroads between fear and freedom. Closing her eyes, she visualized the warmth of connection she yearned for and the possibility of understanding that could blossom from her raw honesty. Her finger trembled slightly, hovering above the publish button. She imagined the responses she might receive, the support, the criticism, the conversations that could spark from her truths. It was time to turn this transformative impulse into action. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she pressed the key, and in an instant, her words were free, cascading into the world like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Breathless, she leaned back, heart pounding, grappling with the enormity of what she had just done. Though concern flickered through her, it was the exhilaration that stole the scene. And unveiling had begun, a compelling journey of personal reckoning. Yet a strike of apprehension loomed over her. What would her past connections think? Would they follow her online? The unpredictability of the fallout hung in the air, mixing with the intoxicating thrill of possibilities. Maria found herself wondering if she had the strength for the responses that might come. The next chapter of her journey was just beginning, and its unforeseen challenges beckoned. How would she navigate the reactions of those from her past, and could this bold step ultimately lead her to the connection she sought? The sun hung high in a cerulean sky, marking the start of a new day that felt different, yet familiar. Maria's heart thrummed with a blend of hope and anxiety as she opened her laptop again. The world was still responding to her recent publication, a swirling mix of comments and reactions flooding in. Each ping of a notification sent a jolt through her. It was exhilarating and terrifying, like standing at the edge of a high cliff. With trepidation, she began to read the responses. Some were encouraging, lauding her bravery and the poignancy of her stories. Others, however, struck like barbed wire, sharp and unforgiving. This is too personal. You shouldn't air your dirty laundry for everyone to see. Each critical remark sparked a cacophony in her mind, dredging up old fears and insecurities. The doubt she thought she'd conquered surged back, whispering that perhaps she'd made a grave mistake. Yet, amidst the torrent of criticism was a voice that resonated more deeply, a comment from a stranger who shared her own struggles with vulnerability. Your story gave me courage to share my own, the commenter wrote. Thank you for being real. In that moment, Maria recognized the power of connection through shared experiences. It was not merely her words that mattered, but the heart behind them, the truth that united them, and she couldn't turn away from that. Driven by this newfound understanding, she set out to explore this reaction further. How did it feel to be that stranger who found her voice in Maria's words? The journey towards vulnerability was not just hers, it was universal. She began drafting her next piece, still flowing with the momentum from her previous writing, but this time with an aim to engage with her readers more intimately. Each line became an exploration not just of her life, but of the lives of others who might feel the weight of isolation in their truths. With every keystroke, she reflected on the hurdles faced by those around her. Her colleagues at the cafe, shy and unassuming, harbored aspirations that flickered like distant stars. Her childhood friends, once vibrant with dreams, lulled into the mundanity of adult life, relinquishing their hopes. Maria questioned whether she had the skill to weave those narratives into her writing, a blend of her own stories with those she observed. Could she amplify their voices in her exploration? Yet hesitation clawed at her anew. After some introspection, Maria realized the internal critic was her most ruthless adversary, challenging her boldness at every turn. She had shared her truth, but it was time to delve deeper. Am I really ready to carry the stories of others? She pondered, fear creeping in. The challenge began to loom larger, the prospect of layering personal experiences with the collective tales of those around her. Would she be qualified to speak on behalf of others, or would it come across as exploitative? Maria grappled with this moral dilemma, weighing the risks of misrepresentation against the potential to inspire connections. As she shaped her narrative, Maria felt herself navigating uncharted waters. Each keystroke served as a revelation, unveiling not just her weaknesses but her strengths. She realized her voice was a tool for empowerment, not merely a vessel for her experiences but a platform for others. The stakes felt uncomfortably high, but the thrill of discovery surged in her veins. Could she encourage others to embrace their truths, just as she had done? With renewed determination, she envisioned the response her next piece could provoke, a cascade of voices echoing across fragmented experiences, forming a coalition of truth-tellers. But the shadows of doubt lurked ever closer. What if her efforts misfired? The flicker of worry remained, begging for resolution. Despite this, Maria took a deep breath, allowing a surge of excitement to override her fears. As she typed the final lines of her new essay, she sensed the transformative power of vulnerability, the experience now interwoven not just within herself, but in a larger narrative. And as she hovered again over the publish button, a thought struck her. Perhaps it was not just the fear of criticism she faced, but the fear of success, the possibility that her voice could resonate even further than she imagined. Could she rise to meet that challenge? The moment felt monumental, and in that instant, Maria realized her journey was not only about telling her truth but about embracing the truths of those around her too. The blend of anxiety and anticipation coursed through her, and she knew this chapter held a weighty significance. As she pressed publish, she felt the world shift once more, teetering on the precipice of new connections and revelations. What awaited her in this vivid exploration of vulnerability? The answers lingered just out of reach, and the next step beckoned. Under the bright sun of a late spring afternoon, Maria sat at her desk, a sense of calm washing over her as she reviewed her journey. The past few months had been a whirlwind of experiences, growth, and emerging confidence that had transformed her life from one of muted existence into a vivid exploration of her voice. She had navigated through vulnerability, criticism, and moments of profound self-discovery. Finally, she was ready for the next leap. After sharing her work online and witnessing a resounding wave of support, Maria understood that her story had found a place in the hearts of many, those who felt isolated, unseen, and unheard. As she often sat in that charming cafe, the warmth of supportive texts and comments uplifted her spirits. Each message resonated like an echo of connection, fueling her desire to stretch even further. In the weeks following her last publication, she decided to organize a community workshop focusing on writing as a tool for self-exploration and healing. This initiative would not only showcase her personal growth but also provide a platform for others to find their own voices, encouraging them to embrace their narratives, their fragility and strength alike. This was her moment to impact others directly. With her event planned, Maria dove into preparations. She sketched outlines, compiled prompts, and envisioned a space where participants could safely explore their narratives. Each step she took solidified her purpose and confidence further. She was no longer just a maid who daydreamed of literature, she was now a catalyst for inspiration and growth. The day of the workshop arrived, and her heart raced with anticipation as she set up the room. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the sign she had created, Stories of Resilience, a workshop on writing. When the participants began to arrive, a mix of nerves and excitement enveloped her. Each face represented a different story, and she welcomed them with an open heart, recognizing the familiar glimmers of vulnerability she had once experienced. As the workshop unfolded, Maria guided the participants through exercises aimed at unlocking their self-expression. The room filled with laughter, tears, and the scratching of pens on paper as stories were shared, connections formed, and memories unearthed. During one poignant moment, a young woman shared a story about her struggles with self-acceptance. Maria recognized the shifting energy within her, mirroring her own transformation as she created space for others to embrace their truths. In that transformative setting, Maria demonstrated not only her command of the skills she had honed through her education but the flourishing competence that had become her identity. The feedback from participants illuminated her heart. This was life-changing. And I shared things I never thought I could. These words validated her journey, the very path she had fought to carve out for herself less than a year ago. With the workshop deemed a success, Maria did not retreat into the comfort of achievement. Instead, she stood in the spotlight of her transformation with confidence. As the applause echoed in the room, she savored the moment, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment settle within her. This was a victory forged in the heat of vulnerability and born from a spirit of persistence. Recalling where she had begun, she felt immense gratitude for every challenge that had molded her. The shadows that once loomed were now mere reminders of a landscape she had traversed and conquered. No longer shackled by self-doubt, she excelled not only in her academic pursuits but in her capacity to uplift others. With newfound clarity, Maria approached her writing with determination. This had become more than personal exploration, it was a mission to weave the details of life into a broader narrative that affirmed the human experience. The lessons shared during her workshop propelled her to submit yet another essay to a prominent literary journal, a chance for her voice to resonate even further. As she sent her submission, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. She had achieved not just individual resolution but had also solidified her role as an advocate for self-expression. She had claimed her narrative, transformed her ambition into a beacon for others, and invigorated her purpose through shared human connection. The sense of fulfillment enveloped her gently, whispering affirmations of her journey and accomplishments. Maria had risen from the confines of a former identity to become a catalyst for change both in her life and in the lives of others. This was not the end of her journey but the brightest beginning, and she was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Now, step into the next chapter of your own story. Don't hesitate. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment with your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-changing journey. You need to subscribe now, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let's spread the message of personal overcoming together.